The following is a conversation with Scarlett Herron. Scarlett is 19 years of age and plays for Shamrock Rovers first team in the Women's National League in the Republic of Ireland. I really enjoyed this conversation with Scarlett. In terms of her age and her personality, she has wisdom well beyond her years. And rather than talking just specifically around football and her career, she allowed us to open the door into different aspects within her life, her opinions, and also her, I would say, overall philosophy of ways of thinking. This is an interesting listen to anybody that's playing football, within football or coaching, especially around the mindset of young players and how different specific minds are in comparison when you're looking across players across the dressing room. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please don't forget to leave anywhere to a 5-star review. The same goes for Spotify as well. The Trader 1-to-1 podcast is proudly sponsored by Financial Planning Matters. We recently recorded a latest episode with the founder of Financial Planning Matters, Niall O'Connor. In the episode, we talk about a couple of the basics of what the services they provide do, ways to get in contact, and just various stories about managing your financial future. Here is the thumbnail, and you can find the link for that video in the show notes below. But yes, these women I'm on the fence now about like how cold exposure actually helps like your recovery. Yeah. But I definitely know it's a great, like, I would say, what would I say? It's a great like mind resetter. Like it just like cuts your nervous system in half and just resets
serotonin,
again.
like mad. Just makes you like gently change your mood, like it's all
100%.
I find on like I felt a class.
And like it can be pissing rain after and it still doesn't matter. It's that warm core feeling is it's amazing.
It is class.
It's amazing. Is that rolling?
Yeah, I just want the natural start, so.
Right, well here we are. Scarlett, I said to myself on the podcast, I'm not gonna botch it. How do I pronounce your second name?
Herron.
Herron.
Yeah.
Like the bird.
Like the bird, yeah.
Herron. I thought it was Herron, and I didn't want to botch it and sound like an idiot. And I've done that before. So I was like, I'm just going to ask you out straight. To those that don't know you, it'd be great to give me an elevator pitch on who you are and what you're doing day to day.
Just a rundown.
As simple as that.
Yeah, I'm Scarlett Herron, as you said. I play for Shamrock Rovers in the Women's National League. I go to college in New City, and I am 19 years old, which came to a shock to you a few minutes ago.
The reason why I did is because I'm going to say, do you remember me playing that 5-a-side over Christmas? My worst performance in T1-to-1.
It was a shocker.
Oh, I was. No. Look, there's one thing I've been working on, it's honesty, and I was terrible that day. And Jess Fitzgerald still gives me stick over. But I was like, Jesus, Scarlett would be a great captain. I said it to you on the day, but I was saying to the lads after, I was like, she'd be a great captain. And I was like, 19. I was like, that's insane. Do you see yourself as a leader?
I'd like to think so. I think, like, especially I came into like Rovers last year in the middle of the year, and I think it's kind of difficult to come in mid-season to any team, and I don't know, you're trying to prove yourself more than anything. But I do definitely see myself in that role, but maybe not in like an entirely vocal way. I'd like to think I lead by example in a lot of ways as well, but definitely it's something that I like would want to like have a chance to do in the future as like captain of the team, I suppose. But it's a lot of pressure, like, but you know, I think it takes a certain personality, definitely, like
100%.
Yeah,
definitely. Although you haven't been in many dressing rooms or many dressing room environments, what do you like in leaders?
Lead by example, like as I said. I just think that's the most important part. But I also think there needs to be like an element of fear. Is that like really old school to say, maybe? But
I don't know. I've talked about this before. I am drawn towards more autocratic leadership sometimes.
Yeah.
So people who are like cutthroat will curse and blind at you.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
also like run for a brick wall face sort of thing. And you die for them, sort of. I'm
drawn to authentic people. And I'm drawn to charismatic people, just like a cult. No, but like people who are like Jose Mourinho, I would run through a wall for.
Yeah,
I don't even know the guy. Like I've never seen a session. I reckon he's burned so many players, but to me, like that's someone that's on like a mantelpiece for what I would definitely see as like a top leader.
Oh yeah, and I think that's like one of the key things is like honesty as well, integrity. And I think if you're not, especially in managers and in like captains alike, if you're not gonna run through a brick wall for them or die for them on the pitch, like not really doing their job right, sort of thing. But I think it does depend. Like even listening to back to a few of the podcasts you have done talking about leadership and stuff, like it does depend on the person. Like some people are vocal, like scream your ear off, sort of Roy Keane. And then other people are sort of the quiet types, like sort of, I suppose Messi just doesn't really do much shouting, but just is like unbelievable and just like carries the team on his back sort of thing. But
I find podcasts very interesting, or even just like, I think we're obviously very grateful to have the opportunity to speak to a lot of different people, especially in football and different backgrounds. And like in the men's game, like there's no bigger captain name than Roland Finn. And even like talking to him about leadership, he finds it quite like difficult to, articulate like what even a good leader is. It's very difficult to get the impression of somebody on a leadership perspective across the couch. But even like working with you, for example, in those games, like it's different in a one-on-one session. Like that's very much like, it's outcome driven specific. But when you're around other players and you're around like different characters, you really see who has like those leadership qualities. One thing that I've always found really interesting in players, and what I saw in you as well, was a very good understanding of who to, speak to in a little bit more of a like an authoritative voice, who to have a laugh and a joke with, and how to like draw the lines correctly between what's too much in both areas. So like you can go too hard on a player or you can be too laughy jokey. I think you play that game well, which would be very interesting to see like when you're mid-20s and you've got another 5 years of experience. I'd be very surprised if you weren't in some sort of leadership group or wearing that armband, whatever club you're at.
yeah, I think that's really important, like, isn't it? Because a lot of players, like, I don't want to use the word snowflakes, but like there's that term be thrown about a bit, like in recent years, like, but I think you really need to know who you're speaking to, and also like how they will react to like different pieces of information and being thrown at them. Like you can't curse someone off the pitch if they're gonna like take it personally and sort of react badly to that. Some players will go into their shell, which is understandable if you're getting screamed off by your captain or something like that. But then other players they relish that, and I think a lot of players will perform better under that sort of scrutiny. But yeah, I suppose it's just knowing who you're playing with as well. And like there's obviously players to have a laugh with, and then there's players who probably just want to focus on the game more than anything, and then they have the banter in the change room or whatever afterwards. So I think that like, yeah, it's hard to navigate, I'd say, but I suppose it's just knowing your teammates and knowing who's around you.
Do you actively like observe your teammates in the sense that you would understand, like if you're in a dressing room scenario, like if someone is talking too much, that they could be a little bit anxious? Like, do you pay attention to those little details?
I wouldn't say so. Like you're kind of just really focused on yourself. But
Yeah.
I suppose you can kind of definitely gauge like the changing room morale as a whole. Like even at the start of this year, like I've noticed a big shift from like our first game to like last weekend. Like we haven't had like the greatest start in terms of results, but like our performance has been quite good. But then even I think like a team coming together is a big thing as well. Like we went to the Curragh on our weekend off during the international break a few weeks ago, and like we were all carrying sandbags and logs and tires up these mountains, like, and these army people screaming at us, like. But it brings you together, and I suppose like you can just notice the shift since then. But I don't really think it's noticing like individual players, but I'd say everyone just sort of is too focused on themselves really to notice it. I don't know, like I think players, we all sit in our heads as well a lot. Like if something goes wrong, like I know superstitions are a big thing as well. So if something doesn't go your way on like a game day or something, you could be stressing out. And then you're sort of thinking, is my body language wrong? Like, is my coach going to think if I'm not looking him in the eye, is he going to like think that I'm not listening or not that I'm paying attention, not in the zone sort of thing? But no one's really, I don't think anyone's paying much attention to anyone else. I think it's all just in your own head. Like
100%. I learned that coaching and managing on game days. Whatever you say, 3% of it will be taken in.
Yeah.
5% by some players, 10% by the ones that like idolize you, which they shouldn't, by the way. Like no one should be idolized on a managerial side. And I think when it really comes down to like what a great leader is, that from what I've seen, is someone that understands that authenticity aspect of players are their own beings, and regardless of like what you tell them on a session or what you do, etc., at the end of the day, they will be ready for that game if they are. I wouldn't say mentally prepared, but if they just allow themselves to be exactly who they are, because at the end of the day, they've done the work. All professional athletes do most of the case and most of the time. And I think just allowing players to have that little bit of leeway definitely, I would say, steps up performance. And the reason why I'm saying that is it kind of leads me to a question. When it comes to, you know, Scarlett as like a young player, I'm talking like 8, 9, 10. That's when the real foundations were laid. Like, how did you even get into football? Like, you're from Monaghan, not mistaken.
Yeah.
That we discussed earlier. I wouldn't consider that a football county.
No,
How does this journey to playing in Tallaght Stadium emerge?
Yeah, I suppose it's probably a bit of a long one, so I'll try to cut it short. But
As long as you want.
we're here for hours, are we?
If we need it. I have to cut the other one short. I'm only messing.
It's the same story as everyone, really. Like, you're coming from a small town. There's like Monaghan's a big Gaelic oriented county. Like, there's no hurling really, no soccer. Like, there is to some extent, but it's big on Gaelic. Like, so obviously played that growing up as well. I think when you're younger, you're just kind of thrown into every sport. But like, I know my parents put me into like Irish dancing and stuff as well. But I think they realised quite quickly that I just wanted a football. Like, but yeah, I suppose in terms of football, like playing from probably 3-4 years of age, just going down to like the local club, and then obviously you build up. But there was no girls teams in Monaghan at that time. Like, so you playing with the lads until about 15 years of age. Like, but I think that was probably something that made me into the person I am. Probably instilled a lot of the leadership roles that you apparently can see.
I can.
So
definitely.
Yeah. So just growing up playing every sport under the sun, really. And then at 15, it was really when the pandemic hit that I kind of realised that I wanted to take it a lot more seriously, because until that age I was still playing like Gaelic. I was playing like under 16 minor for the county in Gaelic, like, and like sort of playing soccer as well. But then when you reach, I don't know, you kind of have to choose one or the other if you want to take one to a more serious level. So it was really in COVID. Like, I was always sport obsessed, but I wasn't like being locked up, like not locked up, sorry, but like being isolated. Yeah. It kind of gave me a bit of drive, and I was like, Jesus, it's actually all it's the thing I miss the most. It's all I want to do, sort of thing. So I think it drilled me on a bit to really go for it. And I said like, oh, like it's all or nothing really now. So gave up Gaelic, give up all other sports. I was playing athletics and different things. Just said like all eggs in one basket sort of job. And yeah, COVID was like a big turning point for me, to be honest, because I really got real fit. Like, I wouldn't always been like very athletic. I wouldn't have taken like my diet very seriously and stuff. But then in COVID, everything just like a switch like flipped in my head, kind of. And yeah, then went up to Peamount then on like we seen trials on Instagram, because to be honest, I didn't know a lot like about the women's game, because like it's not really advertised a lot in Monaghan at all. Like I to be honest, I didn't really know like there was a national league in Ireland, and this is only like 4 years ago. So anyway, seen trials for like Peamount United under 17s, and I was with my coach at home, and we were just like, oh sure, may as well give them a ring. So rang Barry Kinsella and Brian Kay, who were my first like League of Ireland managers. Two brilliant fellas, and then that's really where it started. Then yeah, that's sort of the intro to it. How do you even come across Peamount, for example? I suppose they were probably like the big name club. They still are in women's football, obviously, but they're kind of the only name that we would have known, I suppose, from seeing different players like going to England and them winning league titles and stuff. They're kind of like a household known club for like women's football in Ireland, like anywhere in the country. So it's kind of the only one we knew. Like obviously there was like the men's League of Ireland and stuff, but we weren't really too sure about if they were affiliated even. Like, but I think they were just like, I don't know, came up on the Instagram page, they had trials or something. So we just said we'll go for it, like, and yeah, just headed up, and that's the story, really. It sounded like your manager in Monaghan was with this decision. Did that manager help you get in contact with Peamount and, you know, really push us forward? Yeah, Darren Smith's his name. He was coaching me ever since I was whatever age with Monaghan Town, and like he's the reason I'm here now. Like he's the reason I am where I am. Like taking me for extra sessions and stuff when I was younger, and even now, like, and he's the one who kind of encouraged me to go for it a bit more. Like, I suppose he just like. He always just saying he tells a story of like the first day he actually seen me was like when I was 10 years old playing a match against like a boys team or whatever, and he was like kind of wary, going, oh, she's the only girl playing on that pitch. Like, wonder how she get on. I was playing centre half, and like 5 minutes into the game, he says that I absolutely flattened some lad, and he goes, Jesus, I need to know more about her, sort of thing. So, yeah, that's how we knew each other, sort of. So, but yeah, he kind of pushed me on to sort of go for it a bit more and like to get myself into like a higher standard of football.
Great. I mean, the reason why I asked was because that's the last thing I think a lot of managers would do if they wanted, like if a player had potentially, you know, the opportunity to jump ship. Typically, obviously, player or managers want to keep their best players, and that goes for under 12s to pros. There's not much of a difference, really. You know, like obviously there is in terms of what should and shouldn't be correct procedure, but when it comes to the ego, it's a very difficult thing to separate. With Peamount, I'm guessing from the story there, was that a signature with Peamount and you played 17s? Yeah,
it was just like you join the under 17 team, and then we had a really good year there. Like we won the cup and got to the final of the league as well. And in the first year I was like training with the first team as well under James. So like going into that team, you have like Karen Duggan, Anya, Steph, like just unreal players. So I was kind of a bit starstruck, to be honest. They would have been names that I would have known like coming up. But you're kind of just a bit overwhelmed then, because you kind of go from 0 to sort of not 100, but like up high real quick, sort of not knowing what to do with yourself. But it's good. Like it was good to sort of test the waters and see what their level was actually like, you know.
Yeah, I typically, being involved in National League clubs back in the day, and when country players come in with no previous experience of who the big dogs are at their age group, etc., they come in with a breath of fresh air, who are just there to play and there to work, versus other players get caught in all the other games that are outside of the club sport. Like, you know, I found this guy on social media, this player is here. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I remember we did a Q&A with our members only, and Paddy Kirk was doing it. And one thing that he was saying is that he's obviously North Dublin based, so he knew all the players. But the moment that he signed for Bows at 19s, he was on Instagram looking at the followers that all these different players had, all the Irish caps, and he just instantly felt this like overwhelming feeling. Did you experience anything like that as you started to get in and mingle with, let's say, the top players in your age group, etc.?
Yeah, I suppose you kind of you feel like you're behind before you've even started, because going into that 17s team, you can have sort of names that have played for Ireland so many times already at like under 15, like Bob Doherty sort of cup thing. And you're just like, Jesus, like they're miles ahead of me already. They've been sort of, I suppose, in the mirror for so long, and they're kind of like known within the system. So you're kind of trying to barge yourself into the system, like, and it's hard enough to come in because like no one really knows you. And I suppose it kind of came out of nowhere a bit in terms of like a lot of teams. It's all Dublin girls, or it's all sort of girls from around this area. There's not many, like there's really not many girls coming from Monaghan. And anyone who's really close to up north is in like the Northern Irish League sort of thing. But yeah, I suppose it's strange coming in, but you don't really know, like you're not really aware of it too much when you first start off. So it's kind of just a bit of ignorance nearly coming in. You don't know anyone, you don't know any of the girls. So and when you're at that age as well, like you don't really look at accolades and stuff. You kind of just take everyone for who they are. Like you meet new girls, but you don't exactly know what they've achieved. And even if they've achieved whatever, you kind of just bypass it. You're all at the same club now, you're all doing the same thing now, so it doesn't really make much of a difference to you. Like, yeah,
it's the right attitude.
Yeah,
I'm here to say it's definitely not the attitude that other players have. I'm telling you that for a gospel fact. Even like with some of the players that we talk with who are in and around that 17s level excuse me, in around that 17s level now, all I hear sometimes is stories about other players. This player's doing that, this player's doing that, like this player gets a call up, I didn't get a call up, the world is ending. Like it's mad shit. Like, because when players, like the difference between 15s and 17s and 17s to first team, the drop off level is scary.
Yeah.
Even like for top players, and it has nothing to do with like their ability. It's just like, I don't want to play football anymore. Like everybody has little different things that you will never know about. Some people might be huge into other things. They might hate football. They might resent it. Like you just don't know what's going on. How did you, or why did you shift from Peamount into a different senior environment?
I think it was mainly just to play. Because as a footballer, like if you're not playing, I can't see how you'd want to, like how you'd be happy playing it. Like there's all well and good training, but like there's nothing like playing every weekend. Like it just needs to happen. And I know a lot of players are kind of happy enough maybe to like sit on the bench and sort of have a bit of crack at training and whatever they want to do. But I don't know, it's just not me. Like you just, there's nothing better than going out on a Saturday and playing. I don't think. But I suppose what you were saying there about a lot of players, like comparison is like it's cliche, but it's a thief of joy. Like so. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that young players have nowadays. It's like, oh, they've got a call up or she's moved there or whatever they want to say. Like it's just, it's hard not to compare yourself to other players, I suppose, when you're in the moment. But you just have to really focus on yourself because, like, I suppose everyone's on their own journey. And like you look at the likes of Jamie Vardy not playing Premier League football to this late 20s, and then you have youngsters coming through at 16 making their debuts. Like so. It really like it doesn't matter. It's going to be different for everyone, and I think that's something that like a lot of players probably do struggle. Like I'm not saying I don't struggle with it. Like everyone sort of you compare yourself to players all the time, but it's something that you really should try not to do. It's just really it's you against you, isn't it? Like you're just kind of if you focus on yourself, you can't go too far wrong.
I was only talking about this in the last podcast because the only control that like even on a science perspective. What do you study in college actually?
I'm doing sports and exercise management.
Great. So even like when you go to do, let's say, a thesis, for example, and you need to obviously have like a control in an experiment, like the only person that you can really grade yourself against is yourself yesterday because you have all your same advantages, all your same disadvantages. And like I was saying about players who drop off from football, it could be for 101 reasons. There also could be 101 reasons why people are better than you and they're performing better than you weekly. It could be genetically, it could be mentally, it could be anything. And I think if you get caught in that game, it's zero sum. Like there is no positives unless if you take like inspiration from people. And I've done that 101 times, but you know, typically the inspiration is like a byproduct of learning how to actually, you know, study people a little bit better. And I would say study versus like actual comparison. I definitely find as well comparison is it's like a curve. It's like this. So there's some days where you're very mindful and you're very just like in your own boat. And there's some days where, let's say, one loss comes to a second loss and then you're just at the bottom of the barrel where you're literally like, I cannot believe. Like you're nearly resentful for people who are in the position that you want to be in.
Yeah, it does. It's common, like, isn't it? You just do it subconsciously as well. Like, it's such a horrible thing to actually admit, but there is times where you're looking at, like, I don't know, teams' results or different players, and you're like, you're resentful, like, and you're kind of not wishing, but you're like, Jesus, like, I wish I was in their position, sort of thing. And it's not the way to be, but it's really hard to sort of not have it in your head. But I suppose, like, it kind of needs to just, like, everyone will have their time, sort of thing. If it's free, it won't pass you. Like, you just need to, I don't know, take it your own journey. But you're so right. Like, resentful it's an awful thing, but it does happen to players. And like, I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen to me, because there's times where you're looking at people going, Jesus, like, I wish it was in your position, or you, like, at times you're thinking, Jesus, do they deserve to be in that position, like, sort of thing. And it's something you just have to sort of try get out of your head and try, as you said, focus on yourself, like, because it's the only thing you can control. You can't control what they're doing. You can't control what decisions managers or other people are making. You just have to focus on yourself, your own team, own
Big
performance.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like, at the end of the day, you are at the pinnacle of sport at your age group. You know, as a senior footballer in Ireland, like, this is the pinnacle. You're in Ireland's, one of Ireland's biggest clubs ever. And I think if you weren't resentful for other people's success in some parts, like, I would definitely be, I wouldn't say questioning, like, your sporting, like, goals, but I think a little bit of resentment is natural. I think you just got to understand, like, this isn't, like, a good long-term solution.
Yeah.
But it definitely shows a want to, you know, to achieve, because at the end of the day, there's 101 players that are clawing at your position now.
Yeah.
There are 101 players, yourself included, that are clawing at other positions that are further up the ladder. If you aren't going to allow that little bit of resentment into, like, you know, your psyche, how are you going to allow, like, you know, extreme, like, humbleness? You got to play both sides of the coin,
definitely.
you know? And that's kind of one thing that I wanted to say to you as well. Like, do you ever find when you are playing well, that it's way more easy to be, let's say, on the mindful side of things, where it's like, oh, like I'm not going to compare myself to anybody. Life is good. Like, does that naturally come with winning games?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, it's mad how one result or one performance can just change your perspective on like life. You'd swear if you lose a game or play badly, you'd swear the like world was closing in on you. Like, it's mad. And then the next week you'll win and you'll be on top of the world. But it's hard not to if you have a bad loss or if you played badly in a match. Like, there's times where I'd come home from a game and I'd be like, Jesus, I didn't play well there. But then you kind of you go back and watch and you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't that bad. You know, you kind of just rush to all these conclusions in your head and you think, Jesus, like I was awful, sort of thing. But you need to really, like, I think a lot of footballers need to give themselves a break at times as well. I think we're really, really harsh on ourselves at times. And as well as that, when you're watching a game on telly, you're kind of like, oh, how did he not score that? But like, as well, you need to give other people a break, because like it's not as easy, I suppose. And we give ourselves such a hard time. I think me personally, I'd give myself a hard time after like a bad game or something. It can completely shift your mood, and it's hard to get out of it. And I know people will say like you can't bring that home, or you can't really think about that. You have to go switch off. But like I find it really difficult to like switch off from it. Like the first thing I'll do after games, go home and watch it again. Like it's probably, my dad would say it's unhealthy in a way. Like it's a bit of an obsession, but you just can't really get away from it. But I think there's definitely a balance that needs to be struck between like sort of analysing yourself, like beating yourself up, and then obviously when you win or play well, you're kind of not going, jeez, I'm fucking deadly. Like, so I think there is definitely like a balance to be struck there. But it's hard not to sort of get too far one side of the spectrum. Like,
what's your opinion now on watching games after you play directly? Like, where do you fit on that perspective of this is unhealthy, or I actually think this is a positive thing for my performance?
Oh no, I definitely think it's important. It's definitely a really important part of it. Like, you need to analyse yourself and see where you can improve, what you've done well, and then obviously what you can do better in like next games. I found it really, really helpful, especially in the last year. Just like it helps you understand the game a lot more as well. I think you can really, it's kind of a bit annoying because after the game you kind of see a lot of things that the other team are doing that you could have exploited more, but you're thinking, oh, it's a bit late now, like. But no, I think it's definitely it's important, like, but it is important as well not to get too obsessed with it. Like, I wouldn't you wouldn't be going watching it about 3 or 4 times, like, you know. But it's key to watch it like and get a good grasp of how you're playing, and also just your team as well, like sort of seeing where as a team you can do better. But I suppose that's a manager's job more than anything.
Yeah, definitely watching the games are vital. I think where I was shifting more towards is like, let's say you kick off at 4 p.m, you play your game for 90 minutes, you know, you're not home until what, 8, 9, you shower, you eat, or you shower at the change room, but you're going straight to the laptop and watching the game. So would it not, I'm not saying would it not be, but do you feel like the post-match adrenaline is a really good time to watch the game versus, you know, having a good night's sleep and watching it the next morning?
Yeah, I can see your point there, to be fair. I suppose it's more out of probably just wanting to watch it again. Like, I find it when you kind of want to watch it when you win, and then when you don't win, you kind of like, oh, I don't really want to watch it again. But I think it is important. Like, emotions can probably get the better of you when you watch it the night of the game. Like, I'd watch it the day after, the Monday. It doesn't really make a difference to me. I think it's important to watch it at some stage. But yeah, I definitely think you're right. But I don't know, you can't. I find it hard to wind down after. You're on a buzz. Like, it's hard to get off it. I'd kind of just watch it. You can watch it. I'd watch it quite passively as well. I don't really pay attention unless I'm sort of doing something, which is probably not the best thing either. But I don't know. Yeah, it's probably is important to like switch off more from it.
Hold it there. If you haven't, make sure you check out www.fpms.ie to start your financial journey today.
Like, especially after the game, kind of try wind down. But I think it's hard when your brain's been focused on it all week. It's kind of what you've been obviously training towards and working towards. So you kind of just want to review it straight away.
Yeah, I think I don't have a right or wrong answer. I'm kind of just like trying to get your perspective, because I've talked to a lot of players and they basically say that the adrenaline after games is too high. They can't relax. So they just feel like it's a comfort thing to dip in. from not being a performing top athlete, just coming from my background, I can't think of anything worse than having to go back into that like plunge. Like, to me, it would make much more sense to develop skills to actually learn how to, you know, decrease your heart rate, find an activity that is a way entirely to disconnect and to obviously, you know, recover, replenish, and go at it again. Like, there's often the old saying of, like, if you're in a real fight with somebody, let's say like a verbal like disagreement with like a partner or a friend, and it's getting late into the night, you just part ways and you go to sleep, because when you sleep and you allow that time to recover and that little bit of like space, you come back to the problem way fresher and way more addressed. And then I was thinking, geez, would that be a good thing for players to kind of disconnect for that evening and then come back in the next day, and just you'll see it in like a different light. I was just curious to get your opinion on it.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on it, to be fair. But then on the flip side of it, there's the old saying that's like, never go to sleep angry, I suppose. So there's two ways to look at it.
Yeah,
like,
you're
glass
spot
half full, half
on.
empty.
Yeah, you're spot on.
But to be honest, I don't really find it as like a negative thing to do. Like, I enjoy it. Like, I'd enjoy watching the match back, even when you don't play well. You're never going to be watching and have no positives to take. So I'd find it like I can't really get enough at times. I just like I'd go either I'd go home and watch my own game, or I'd go home and watch the late kickoff in the league on LOI or something like that. Like, I just find it so interesting. I just love watching any sort of it. And I think I really enjoy watching your own games as well, back. I don't know, there's just something about it. It makes you, I don't know. I don't find it to be like taxing in any way, like mentally. I kind of like it. There's a big part of me that enjoys it, and obviously reflecting on your negatives isn't the nicest thing to do, but it's also, you don't be too hard on yourself, as I said. Like, I think it's important, but there's a point in what you're saying as well. Like,
yeah, it's just an interesting one.
Yeah,
But you're right though, and you touched on that a couple of times. I think pro athletes definitely, I think, if you were to summarize them all in one bucket, they're all a little bit too hard on themselves.
Yeah.
It'd be great if they just allowed that little bit of space, because performing in front of people week in, week out, and not letting your teammates down, there's a significant amount of pressure that you just can't quantify. Like, you can't just say like, I'm feeling a lot of pressure today. Like, it's every day, and sometimes it wavers. Do you have any, let's say, practical things that you do per week, per month, etc., or daily, that allows you to have more space for yourself mentally, like, in a sense, being nicer to yourself?
Yeah. I suppose it's coming up, like, in living in Dublin, I spend a lot of time with my friends. Like, I really enjoy, because they're not too into it. Like, I have a few friends that would like follow it and stuff, but when I'm with them, like, it's not a topic of conversation at all.
Nice.
You know. So it's kind of a complete switch off. You're not even thinking about it, because obviously it's not on their mind, it's not in your mind. So I think that's a really good way for me to switch off and just like have a bit of fun, really enjoy yourself, enjoy yourself and enjoy their company, and like kind of made me realize like there's a lot more to life than football. But obviously it's such a huge part. But it's important as well. Like, I think to spend some time to switch off, like socializing, because I think that's one of the things as well that you have to sacrifice like an awful lot. Like, people, like your friends going out and different things, different nights, different parties, weddings, whatever. Like, you can't always get to these things. So I think it's important to be around people, and people that aren't always involved in football, to sort of switch off from it. But apart from that, like, there's not too much. I think this year I've been really, really busy, but I'm one of those people who, like, I need to be proactive at all times. Like, if you ask anyone that knows me, like, I can't sit down. Like, I need to be sort of actively doing something, or like occupied in some way, because if I was to be like sat and be bored, I can't really fathom it. Like, I just don't really enjoy it. Like, I kind of just always need to be doing something, whether it's like going for a walk or even sitting like chatting to people in like the cafe or something. Like, I just always want to be like busy, and like I really enjoy being busy, and if I'm not, I'll probably lose the head. Like,
I want to go down this rabbit hole now.
oh,
So strap in, right?
Okay.
First of all, are you obsessed with football? Like, are you all in?
yeah,
On the flip side, you just said to me there a second ago that there's more to life than football.
yeah.
Where are you then? How do you balance both? Is there balance?
There there is a balance, but I've only kind of struck it recently. I would say I'm 100% definitely obsessed with it and all in. Definitely. There's no doubt about it. But I think you can be both obsessed and also have some sort of life. You train 3 hours, like you go home, you make your food, whatever. Like there's a lot of hours in the day, you know. And whether you're going for a gym session in the morning before training or whether you're taking a day off, like there's a lot of free time. And obviously you need to do your bits like analysis, you need to go to the gym, you need to do your recovery, you need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to do whatever. But there's also a lot of hours in the day where you don't have to do those things, which is the time that you can spend with people around you. And I find that for a long time I probably like neglected a lot of that. And I think it's especially coming out of school, because I'd go into school at, say, I'd get in at 8 o'clock, you'd kind of be there all day and you'd get out about 6:30. Or if I had training, I'd get out at 5 and go straight to training. So I'd be eating dinner, in the car, driving down to wherever I was, doing homework in the car. So you don't have any of that time. And then your weekend is you have school Friday, then game on a Saturday, and then Sundays you're probably your only day off. And either you spend that with people, or you spend that studying, or you spend that at a football pitch training again. So I think with college it gives me a lot more leeway to sort of, and also I'm saving a lot of time from travel as well. So like now my travel to train is about half an hour, which is like, it's a new world to 2 hours every night up and down. Like it's the world of difference. So I think having a lot of free time also helps. But as well as that, like I think spend time with people around you is it's really important, because if not, you'll get sort of so caught up in your own head that you kind of, I don't know, there is a balance to be struck, because I think to isolate yourself completely isn't healthy at all, which is quite obvious. But I think you can definitely be obsessed, but also enjoy yourself in parts as well, and sort of let others in your world in as well. Because a lot of the time I think at home, I'm an only child, so it was like me and my parents at home, and they'd say that like I'd be obsessed with it or whatever, and there'd be times where I'd like fall out with them over like different like decisions I was making to do with football, and having to travel down to training in like the ice, snow, going down to like Athlone, and it's an awful road. I remember falling out with my dad one night saying, "No, I have to go to training," and like the conditions were awful, like it was not safe to drive. And looking back, that's probably not the best decision. Like putting yourself, your dad at risk, like, and obviously he wasn't happy with me, like, but they're just sort of them things you do that I look back now and I'm like, did I really have to go? But then there's another part of me that's saying you did have to go, because maybe that one training session they all build up, sort of thing. So it is definitely a hard balance to be struck, and I'm not entirely sure where I am with it, but I think you can be 100% obsessed and all in, while also having some sort of you obviously enjoying life and giving yourself a break and time with your friends and your family. That was a bit of a rant.
No, it's a very well thought, mature answer. Yeah. I was not thinking that at 19. I tell you that now for a fact. That took me a lot of work to get to where I am today. But I'd be in this similar thing. I think you can definitely be all in. Yeah. Definitely. And you can definitely allow more time, more space for the other things that matter. I think the way that I kind of came to the conclusion was like an 8-pillar method. So, you know, if you've got a very heavy roof, it needs at least X, Y, Z pillars. Yeah. I just define it as 8 on like the main categories of places where, you know, it definitely had like value to me. And definitely I think when you've got a good understanding of like what those pillars are for you, even if one has like a crack in it, the weight of the other 7 or the stability of the other 7 will keep the weight off it, so you can allow for repair time. Yeah, I think where life becomes very slippy is when you like slip on the main principles, and you know, like 5 or 6 pillars start to get cracked, and then obviously it comes down like a house of cards. And if football is one pillar, even if it has like a bad crack, let's say for example like a bad injury, you get released, etc. If you don't have the correct support networks, like even for example like as footballers, like financial management is so important, your relationship with your health, your physical health, your mental health, your family and friends, your living situation, like all of that is a pillar in some aspects. You can define them as you want, but that's always what my answer is to people. It's kind of what you were saying as well. I'm probably just like, I would say visualizing it more like in that aspect. I would be more like a visual person. I like to create like diagrams or mind maps of what things are.
Do you ever see that video where it's like he has different shapes and he sort of, it's like different aspects of your life, so one's family, friends, work, whatever, and he puts them all in like this little square and it's sort of a bit jumbled up, but then he takes them all out again and he then arranges them, puts them back in, and it's all expanded. And it's sort of like an analogy for like, you can have time for all these things, you can sort of have everything in your life at a balance, but the pieces have to be given the right amount of space, the right amount of time to sort of put them all together and to have them fit. So I don't know, I just seen that video recently. It's an interesting analogy on sort of balance, as we were saying, like
100%. And like if you put a gun to my head and ask like, is there such thing as like balance? My answer is no. And the reason why is because like I've gone all in to like the detriment, and it's pulled me to some great places.
Yeah.
I've paid the cost, and it might take me a good 2 or 3 years to pay the debt like of that cost. For example, like if it was mental fatigue, poor relationships, you kind of like iron out those as the years go on. Even like if we were doing talks in schools or anything, like my one piece of advice, like if you really feel like that time that you got like epiphany in COVID, like if you really feel like you gotta go for it, go all in. And I mean like burn if you have to, because you know there will be a time when you look back and say like, Jesus, I wouldn't have got there if I didn't overextend.
That's the other side of it.
You know what I mean?
Like even you had Chris Forrester on and he was saying like he feels like he didn't truly go for it. And like that's my biggest fear.
Oh,
like imagine, I can't imagine in 15 years, 20 years looking back and saying, geez, I could have done something more, could have done this, could have done that. Like you need to go. That's the thing about like I suppose obsession. Like if you don't give your all, like don't give anything, because you just if you really want something enough, I actually do believe, and it's sort of hard to like, sort of hard to put it into perspective, but like I think if you do want something enough, you can get it no matter what that be. So I think that's definitely something that I'd be really, really conscious of, is like, do not have any regrets in life. Like go for it. If you want something, go for it. Like
100%. And I think I've only been moved a couple of times, like with podcasts or speeches or anything like that. It's a bit blasé for me, but when someone really speaks from like the authentic aspect, like I'm drawn in. And one of them was, I forgot what podcast it was, but essentially the moral of the story was like, you're dead, you're in heaven, you're in line with God, and when you're looking up, you see God going through a board with somebody. It's like a flip chart, pulls off the thing, next person, that's my name called, and he lists out all these things, and I'm just like these amazing things. Let's say, for example, like Trainer 121, like multi-million euro company, you know, you paid for all of your generations of family, you are like in great mental and physical health. And it's like, well, I didn't really get that. It's like, well, that's what you were meant to be if you done X, Y, Z. And like, Jesus, fuck. Now that can become very existential. Like you become very like, oh my God, like if you live in that bubble, nothing else matters. That's when it becomes quite, I would say, dangerous. At the end of the day, like we're all limited to our, you know, geographic disposition, our genetics, etc., etc. And at the same side of the coin, it's like, oh, like who's going to let their, you know, all these excuses kick in? It's such a difficult,
isn't it,
line to walk.
It's a very grey area. Like I don't know. I'm still not sure how to feel about it. It's sort of something I think no one can ever truly like fully understand or grasp. No. But like I've seen that before. Like that, it's what you could have been, sort of thing. Like it's scary. But then it's like, where do you draw the line? I think I think in a sport like football, you'll always end up disappointed nearly. Like no matter how far you go, even if you're Champions League winner, World Cup winner, I feel like you'll always look back at some stage and go, oh, I could have done this. Like I could have, I don't know. I think there's never going to be, like you're never going to sit there and be like, yeah, like I truly did it. Like I've done it all, sort of thing. Obviously there's players that are so decorated, you kind of think, how would you not think they've done it all? And this is in like any walk of life, in business and in life in general. I just don't think you'll ever reach a a point of full satisfaction. I think that really does come from like within, and it sounds a bit like cliche, but I think it is really important to realize that you probably will never be fully satisfied or like fully at peace with what you've achieved. But I do think that there is a certain level of like you can sort of go for it, reach for the stars sort of thing. And if it doesn't work out to what you initially thought, at least you'll fall to a certain grade below that you wouldn't have reached if you'd went for the big one. And I think like I really like actually became aware of that when like I only played for Ireland at under 17 level, which was it was always my dream, like to sort of represent your country. And as I said earlier about like the system sort of thing, you're coming in late, like no one really knows who you are. All these girls have been in under 15 underage teams from whatever age, 13 years of age, like, so it's incredibly difficult for like a country girl to come in and break in and get into a squad. Like, so I remember I made, like, it was always my dream when I was younger. It's all I used to say, like, I want to play for Ireland, at any level, I don't care, sort of thing. And I remember I made my debut for the 19s against England one day, and like my parents were there, my coach Darren was there, and I remember we flew home that night with the team or whatever, and I was on the way home from the airport with my parents and Darren, and I remember my mum saying to me, so like is that it now, like is that the goal, like is that it, is that all the pressure and everything to like achieve your dream done? I was like, no, like I want more, like sort of thing. I don't think you'll ever, and I was saying to her, like, I don't think I'll ever stop wanting more. And like my mum, she's not really that big into football, she doesn't really understand the full thing, she obviously just wants to see me happy sort of thing. But she obviously has seen like the lows of not getting into squads, sort of not playing, not winning like losing finals, whatever it may be, like, and she sort of couldn't really understand. She was like, but you've sort of done what you've wanted to do since you were 4 years of age, like why is there more? And it's just like there's always going to be another thing like to achieve or do in your own head. Like you set one goal, you achieve it, then you think, okay, need to go bigger, how do I go one step further? So I think there's always going to be that level in my head anyway, and I think in a lot of people's minds. But yeah, it's an interesting topic, definitely.
You touched on so many interesting things there. Like so many. Your maturity is frightening, if I'm being honest with you. The disappointment aspect you said with football. Yeah. In your, I would say, 2-3 years senior football?
Yeah.
And international underage. If you were to gauge a percentage of disappointment to joy, what would that ratio look like?
I find it actually really strange because I find you have bad periods and then good blocks. So for me, to be honest, like touch wood, I've had quite a good period for the last wee while. Like no injuries, sort of been quite successful, like in performance and stuff. Feel like I'm improving every week, sort of thing. But there was a period when I was maybe 17 where it was like a rough enough like 3 months, and like there was nothing serious. I got injured at one stage and that sort of knocked me back a bit, but it was just like a ligament problem in my ankle, but it wasn't like a surgery rehabilitation thing. It was like a month, 2 month thing. But then you find, like, I remember not getting onto like a squad for the international team, and it kind of happened in like a period. So I find that like you kind of, if one thing goes wrong, a lot of things go wrong after that, but not in like to a big capacity. But it's strange because you kind of go on good runs and bad runs, but you can't really get too low with them, I suppose. But it's hard. It's extremely hard not to, especially if they pile up on each other. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to gauge like what percentage if you were to give like a ratio. It's really difficult. I couldn't even tell you. But to be honest, like the disappointment of losing. Like I remember we lost to Shells last year in the FA Cup semi-final, and like, oh, I was distraught. Like, and like my dad would be like the one I'd go to. Like he's big into sport. Like he's always sort of been the person to give me advice on different things, and like he's seen me at the lowest and at the highest sort of thing. And like I remember even the morning after, like I'd gone home that night and like just ranted to him and been like devastated in front of him sort of thing. And he's always said to me like, why don't you want to be like a teacher where like you go to work, you come home, there's no like highs or lows, like it's just sort of the same. You don't come home like in football, like your career is kind of determined by other people as well, by managers and things, like and luck. It's a lot of luck. Like you need a few lucky breaks. So he like as a parent, it's obviously a lot harder because for me, I love it, like because you go out and play and it's brilliant. But for a parent, it's probably difficult enough seeing your child like disappointed and upset about different results or different things. Like it's probably tough. Like, but like I always said, I'm like I'll take every low because the highs are so damn good. Like, and they're all learning curves. You kind of I try to take like an experience, like a learning experience from everything bad that happens. Like when we're talking bad, we're talking about like losses or bad performances or injuries or whatever. You kind of need to take, if you can take a learning from every bad situation, I think that's really important as well. Sort of just build on, and you need to sort of make mistakes to learn as well. And that's in every aspect of life as well. So, but yeah, it'd be really difficult to put sort of a ratio or a percentage on it, to be honest. But I think it depends on the player, definitely, because players have it, like a lot of players have it really bad in terms of luck, and then players as well will like soar to the sky with luck. It just sort of really depends. But to be honest, I think I've been quite fortunate so far. So touch wood anyway. But yeah.
When you are competing, like on the edge of performance, I would consider footballers, they're in the extreme side of life. So like highs are very high, lows are very lows. I find most of the rewards in life are also in the same bracket. So the people who take the biggest risks typically have the highest reward. Like to create Amazon as a company, for example, you're taking massive risks constantly, year in, year out. And you need to obviously have a lot of luck. There's always luck that's involved. Parents, on the other hand, are risk averse for kids. They don't want that at all because it involves hurt, pain, and everything else that comes with the cost of it. And that's definitely a difficult conversation. I always find that with young parents. So when I say young parents, I mean they've got young kids. Try not to get involved in the political aspect of, you know, what that child like wants to do in the sport. Like that they're exploring the edge, if that makes sense. And I think what a really good parent, this is from, I'm not a parent at the moment, so, you know, disclosure. But to me, what I've seen in really good parents, they are facilitators of safety without, you know, punctuating it with their own like fears, if that makes sense. So they facilitate. So when players are at lows, they want to feel comforted. Like that's from like a 7-year-old to like a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
Like when the shit hits the fan, you want someone to kind of wrap you in and say like it's going to be okay, you know. But that becomes like, you know, a knife in the back sometimes when it's a hug. If you start to like, you know, portray your fears onto the kid as well, like maybe I should. You know, when you like, I'm not saying that your dad on this, but I've seen it like 101 times. Like, how come you just don't be like this? Although it's a question, it's an answer. Like, it's an answer to their fear, and they're trying to project that onto you.
Yeah.
Like, I always find, like, obviously you've got this tunnel vision, but I wonder how many great people have gone to the wayside when they've let somebody else's fear just resonate onto them.
Yeah. That's a really, really interesting topic. Like, to be fair, like my dad, I know that makes sound like he's projecting fear.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, I meant to make
don't
sure
think
that
that's
was
the case
clear,
for him.
yeah.
He's just sort of, he kind of laughs about it, saying like jokingly, I suppose. But I'm aware of how difficult it must be for them. But like to be fair, they've been extremely supportive of all ambitions I've had and will like or continue to be. But yeah, that's really interesting. I've never actually really thought about that to any extent, but yeah, I think other people's opinions as well, and sort of how other people might perceive you. I think definitely in football, I suppose every kid wants to be a professional footballer. So I suppose if you say it with like gusto and you mean it, they're kind of, a lot of people maybe with more traditional views, and like they're probably right to a certain degree. It'd be like, oh right, okay, like
The odds are in their favor.
Oh yeah. So I suppose if you let that build on top of you, it could become more of, you question yourself. I think that's when it becomes really dangerous, because I found like confidence is so important. Like it's everything in every walk of life. It is absolutely everything. If you do anything with confidence, there's a high chance of success in anything. So I think definitely when, I suppose, even if it's your friends sort of questioning, saying, oh, do you really think that's the right idea or whatever, like that definitely can influence you. And I think you just need to as you said, just have tunnel vision and say, if you believe in yourself enough, if you believe in your own ability, like, don't let anyone else tell you otherwise, because they're projecting their fear, maybe projecting their own insecurities. Maybe it's a sense of sort of, as we were saying earlier, about not wanting people to do well. So it can be a lot of those things, and maybe it's just out of pure interest and care, not wanting you to sort of fail or fall flat on your face, which is nice as well. But you just, if you believe in yourself enough, don't let other people influence you. Go for it. Obviously, not to a stupid extent. You have to have backups. You need to sort of prepare for the worst in a lot of situations, which I don't think a lot of players, especially in football, do at times. There's no plan B. In terms of education as well, like, a lot of players don't do they're leaving certain different things, which I think is, like, really important. You need to have some sort of thing to fall back on. But
I would argue with footballers in Ireland, they don't even have a plan A, yet alone a plan B. Like, I've seen some players now that have come in, just with us, for example, we've got a lot of data. Like, we've seen a lot of players across all walks, and you know, you got some players that they're just half-assing it. Like, they're not in. Like, if this is your plan A, like, you can't even spell plan at the moment, like, and that's common, isn't it? And yet alone, like, a plan B. So I just find that just a very interesting topic. Like, if you've enough time for a plan B, make sure you've got a plan A. Like, and the reason I didn't want to pivot, but there was one question I had, like, just there when we were talking about fear and little things like that. But what would be your main block to performance? You mentioned confidence, etc. But what is your main block of performance consistently?
what do you mean by blocks? Sorry?
What would stop you playing your best every single week?
I think it's a lot of it in my head is preparation, but I don't even think it's that important, because you can prepare as best you want, and then on the day you shit yourself and don't play well. Maybe something gets to you, maybe something said, maybe you're just not feeling it on the day. You can prepare to 100% and still have a poor enough performance. But then on the flip side, you can have zero preparation, either fall flat on your face or play extremely well. It's just sort of, it's chance again. But I think to me, I always want to put myself in the best situation for a match day. There's always a chance it won't go well regardless, but I think it's more, as I said already, if I'm prepared and I know I'm prepared, I'm confident in my ability, because I know I've done everything in my power to make sure that I'm ready for that match or whatever it may be. So I think it's definitely, like, that's important for me, like, to be prepared, and just ready yourself, like, sort of do your analysis, do your training, eat right, hydrate, recover, whatever, because then it's all in, I think it's all in your heads, to be honest. It's like 80% mental at least. So I think for me, to be prepared means to be ready mentally and to be confident, which is sort of, you just take directly onto the pitch. If you're playing with confidence, there's not much that can stop you from sort of fulfilling your ability, like, on the day.
It sounds like you get confidence through preparation. But, as you know it there, I have prepared extremely well for games with a game plan, whatever. We go 2-0 down in 10 minutes. So preparation meant all.
What was that saying, Mike Tyson? It was like, a plan's all well and good until you get a punch in the mouth.
It's so true though.
Yeah, it is.
But, like, my question is, if confidence is bred through preparation, and preparation goes through the window, does your confidence get slashed, or is there confidence coming from other areas as well?
No, I wouldn't say. I think with a lot of players, it definitely would take a bigger hit. I think superstition's a massive thing in football, and I hate it. I think it's the worst thing you could do, because what happens when what happens when the pair of socks you wear every morning is in the wash? Like, there's so many factors that are so small that you probably won't be able to control every single week. And I just think, don't give yourself, it's sort of an opportunity for your brain to tell you, oh, you're not going to play well. It's a chance for the devil on your shoulder to get at you, sort of thing. So just don't give it a chance, nearly. But I know a lot of preparation, you can prepare all you want and maybe something goes wrong on the day. But I think you need to have that inner belief as well. But I think that just comes from, like, consistently training. Like, the game's the easy part. Like, I know I'm not saying that I go out every day and I'm like 100% confident in my abilities, like about ready to fucking nail it. Like, but I think it comes from training consistently. Like if you're training every single day, like you're working towards it every week. There's no reason why you can't go out and play on a Saturday. Like, so I think preparation is probably the main one for me. But as you said, probably can't go perfectly each week. But then you have to just trust the training and information you have already, and as well just go out and like express yourself as well. When you enjoy something, it's not something to fear at all when you are enjoying it. And I think that's the danger with players that aren't enjoying their football. Obviously, if you're on the bench, you're not confident, you're not enjoying it, and then you get thrown on in a game, managers give you 20 minutes to prove yourself, and you shit yourself because you haven't been getting minutes, you're not feeling yourself, you're not feeling confident. So I think that's difficult to deal with as well. So I think it's more when a player isn't happy. I think that's when you really need to dig deep to discover the true confidence you actually do have in yourself, because when everything's against you, you need to really try rise up and like really try give yourself an opportunity to prove yourself. But that's the really hard one, is when, yeah, as I said, like you're in a bit of a runt and you can't get out of it.
I think in a roundabout way we came to the same answer there, because what I've seen, the in my opinion, the only one blocker, and I'm saying the number one, so prep,
Yeah.
what you done in training, all out the window. The one blocker of performance is fear.
Probably. Yeah. That's probably the roundabout way, isn't it?
Fear. Yeah. Because, for example, you forget your superstitions to me are a grasp for control. Because when you're fearful, like even if you think about it on a primal perspective, if you're in a lot of fear, the one thing you want is control to settle everything down. I think that's what superstitions allow. And superstitions, like, for example, like David Beckham speaks openly about this, but he was very superstitious. Same with John Terry and Frank Lampard. And it comes hand in hand with OCD. So, like, diagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a desire for control. And control is what stops fear. And the reason why I'm just getting into the nitty gritty with this is because I think football is, I think it kills performance and managers kill performance because they don't understand primarily like what does all this fall under.
Yeah.
Like treating preparation and treating superstitions, they're just like symptoms of what the real thing is. At the end of the day, players won't perform if they fear or they have a lack of confidence in their ability to do the task, which is perform. And I think especially like I would criticize managers quite heavily for this, because they're the ones that install a lot of the fear, because they are essentially like the gatekeeper to actually crossing the white lines. And I think the real journey that players go on is getting past that fear blockade. So having the ability to actually, go back to when you were playing with the boys in Monaghan, for example, whether it's just zero like thought of when the ball comes into your feet and how you release it and stuff. I've noticed that a lot, like with senior pros, a lot of them just wish to play the game like they'd done back on their clubs when they were kids.
Yeah. No, I think that's really sort of profound, is fear, and like in football especially. It's just fear of mistakes. It's fear of not performing. But I think if you just, it's really hard to get rid of as well. Like even it's sort of when it comes in big flows, and it's hard to sort of get your head like sort of out of the hole. It's a rabbit hole. Like if you go down, you're going to be digging for a while. But yeah, it's really hard to like actually get perspective on when you're sitting here. But it's definitely something that will control a lot of players, and it's one of those things that just you sort of have to live with, and you have to learn how to live with. But I do think that that's the confidence again, sort of the confidence to overcome it. Whether that's making a mistake in a game and then having to say, right, I can either go into a bit of a shell here or try sort of just reset, go again. Like everyone's going to make mistakes on a football pitch. It's going to happen. That's why goals are scored. Most goals stem from mistakes, whether that was 3 minutes before the build up started or right before right before the goal. Like, so you just kind of have to reset in your brain and sort of just play with no fear. I think that's probably the biggest hardest thing to do for a footballer. Play with no fear, because if you're playing with no fear, you're completely expressing yourself and really showing yourself, I suppose. But yeah, like that, it's extremely detrimental to players, isn't it? Like,
The number one.
Yeah.
That and confidence. I think confidence and fear kind of come hand in
yeah, they
hand.
come hand in hand, definitely.
But I think players just have a, I don't know what it's like now. Like I'm coming at it from the coaching perspective, and someone that's like taking a disconnection from teams, just like a studier of people. It's kind of like how I would describe like where I am currently. The lads are a little bit different because Gary's obviously with UCD, for example, but you know, having like a little step back and just seeing players for who they are, just as people, I've definitely come to that conclusion. And another one that I've kind of came to is like players they're very afraid to label things. They're very afraid to label like a lack of confidence or fear. And I think players are the poorest people in the world to diagnose how they feel. I think they're just majority. I'm not saying like all, but majority find it very difficult to articulate how they feel, why they're performing poorly, or why they think they're performing well. They don't have a good understanding of what makes them tick, or you know what's actually resulting in performance. So, but again, that varies. Like there's some, like Chris, for example, like he was obviously one player that, from a conversation, I've seen him play obviously 100 times, but by sitting across from him, like he has some things that will benefit him as a player, especially as like a creative guy when he's in the pitch, that it's kind of like he kind of gives off the impression he doesn't even care. And that sometimes is like a confidence extension or a lack of fear. You know what I mean? And that obviously manifests itself in top performance. But as you said, or as he said, as you noted, sorry, he might not have made it to the levels that he could have. But that's the sacrifice of, you know, no one said sacrifice. It could even just be like a genetic personality thing of being that sort of way. And it's always interesting because everyone's on their own journey. Like, you've no idea your limitations. You've no idea of how far you can go. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, there just isn't. In football, there is no finish line at all. No, definitely. And I think it's really strange, like the different personalities in football. Like, everyone's so different, and like you never know what's going on in someone's head. Like, there's players that sort of waltz into training, they act like they don't give a shit. They're sort of just strolling about, and then on a match day they're brilliant, or maybe they're not. And then there's other players who are so come into training so focused, and it's sort of they nearly stress about it, or they're so intense about the whole thing. And it just shows the different personalities, and it works both ways. Like, both those players could be brilliant footballers. They could be at the exact same level, but it's just different ways they approach training, games, etc. But yeah, I think it's really interesting, like to see different people's like perspectives on like how the game works and sort of how to approach things. But it's just how, I don't know, it's weird, because you think, when I'd see players like coming in being lackadaisy sort of thing, you get kind of annoyed in a way. There's a part of me that be's annoyed, but sort of thinking, why don't you take it more seriously? But like, they obviously do, but they just don't show it in a way. But then you don't really know what's going on in other people's head at the same time. Like, obviously they could. A lot of players I find have, like, footballers have a persona. I'm kind of going a bit off your question here. No, you're on topic. Yeah.
There's players like with personas. All of them have personas. They perceive this level of confidence in themselves, which is like great to have. Obviously, as I was saying, confidence is so important. But like, it's so interesting when you actually get to know certain people. They have this face of like bravado sort of thing, and then when you actually get to know them and you really know them, they're actually like, they're very aware of their faults as well, and they're maybe not as confident as they might appear on the outside. And I think that's a case of a lot of footballers, and a lot of people in life, maybe, that it's a face sort of for the whatever insecurity they may have on the inside. And everyone has insecurities, but I think people just sort of choose who they share it with, which is completely understandable. But it's weird how different people sort of perceive, like how they're perceived and how they actually are on the inside, and that comes with how they show if they're scared, if you said fear, confidence, like everything. It's really interesting how different minds work.
I think it's funny how we sat here for an hour and talked about football for, I don't know,
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Just talked about life.
Well, that's the thing. People only see you, Scarlett, as a Shamrock Rovers centre mid. They don't see you as the person that you are
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And that's a tough, or I'd say now, it's a tough old thing to manage psychologically at times.
Yeah, it's kind of like, even at home, because like obviously there's no footballers from Monaghan, so if you ever mentioned my name to anyone in Monaghan, they'll go, oh yeah, she's the footballer, is she? Which I love, like, but I think it would be really difficult if sort of you didn't get to the levels and then you're going home and everyone's like, oh, it just didn't work out, sort of thing. But yeah, it's all, when it's all you're sort of known for, it's difficult enough, but you kind of, I like embracing it, to be honest, sort of being known as that, but it is definitely one at the back of your head going, oh geez, it's sort of all I'm known for, it's my entire like personality trait kind of thing, but there's a lot more to me, I suppose, as you'll see in this podcast. So.
Big time. Well, look, I really enjoyed that.
So did I.
No surprise. I mean, with your level of maturity and the way that you carry yourself about, like, I think for the majority of people that we've had in the hot seat, like, to be able to speak.
The actual hot seat.
It is. It's bleeding roasting here. The ability to, articulate thoughts. I would say one of the traits I didn't know that obviously you just can't get through football sessions is your ability to take experience and concepts and bring them together for like your future learning. That was something that I thought was very interesting just by talking with you there. And I know that you guys had a relatively tougher start to the season, but of course, best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Touch wood that the body and the mind stays nice and healthy.
Hopefully.
And we'll have another good year on the belt.
Deadly. Thanks for having me on to waffle for an hour, guys.
No worries.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks
Cheers.
a million.